So I wanted to introduce our first keynote speaker. Everybody give it up for Kassandra Perch.
Good morning. Perfect. Awesome. Great. Okay. Wow, a lot of you. So I'm Kassandra, like you said. I'm going to be talking a little bit today about advances in NodeBots and the future of NodeBots. So you mentioned most about who I am, really. I am also a developer evangelist at Auth0. I like to talk about user management and identity management. I'm a NodeBots author. I had a book come out in December called Learning JavaScript Robotics. And this part's a little more easy to see, but I'm a wearables enthusiast. I like to build light-up clothing that connects to the internet. So what are NodeBots? The definition has gotten broader and broader over the years, but I think the definition we've settled on is any hardware that is controlled via firmware or server by JavaScript and/or Node.js. So there's a little bit of history, and by a little bit of history, I mean this movement has really only been in place for a little over 2 years now. In force. It actually started about 5 years ago. In 2011, a library called Node Serial Port was published by Chris Williams, the man who ran JSConf. And it was a little hard to use if you'd never used a serial connection before, and it was still a little cryptic, so it didn't really spur the explosion of the NodeBots community as much as in 2013 when Johnny 5 became a thing, a movement, a library. This was started by Rick Waldron, but now has over 100 regular contributors. It's eponymous with NodeBots as a community. When people say NodeBots, most people think of Johnny 5, and while it is a large part of the movement, and a very important, integral even part of the movement, it is still the part. It did start with just our Arduino boards. However, the rest of history for NodeBots is very, very fast. Once Johnny 5 became prevalent, the NodeBots community exploded. I like to liken it to the Cambrian explosion. If you've ever studied prehistoric history, the Cambrian explosion is a time where on planet Earth, the number of species grew exponentially. And this is true of NodeBots between 2014 and now. There's been a ridiculous amount of growth from many different angles. There are now over 35 platforms supported by Johnny 5 alone. Arduinos, Particle Photons, Tessel 2, lots of different boards just supported by Johnny 5 alone. And we've gone from controlling Arduino Unos to the 35 platforms on Johnny 5 to platforms being developed specifically for JavaScript, i.e. Espruino and the Tessel and Tessel 2. We can now control quadcopters and other Bluetooth devices with JavaScript, and the barriers to entry from cost to difficulty perspectives are all dropping. We've gone from needing to purchase a $40 Arduino Uno to $20 SaneSmart clones. We've gone from dreaming of Wi-Fi connectivity to a $20 particle photon that does connect to the internet out of the box. Espruino Pico is $20 to run a native JavaScript microcontroller. So, and from a difficulty perspective, Johnny 5's documentation has been nothing if not ironclad. If you need to learn about something, a component perhaps, Johnny 5's documentation will 95% of the time have what you need and have documentation not just from a written perspective, but images, things of how to wire it up. And the community is super supportive, even if the documentation does not have what you need. We are moving towards production NodeBots, slowly. Quickly, slowly, depends on your viewpoint. I view it as quickly, but we're talking years, not months. These boards are getting smaller and smaller. The Espruino Pico is about 3/4 of an inch square if you cut off the USB connector. Samsung's Arctic platform is 12 millimeters square and contains Bluetooth LE and Wi-Fi connectivity and can be controlled with Node. We're getting closer to production level NodeBots. Another explosion of the NodeBots community has been software. We're starting to write some amazing software, and not just from the perspective of controlling NodeBots. Johnny 5, while it has exceeded many people's expectations for controlling different platforms and devices, is not the only not the only part of this show. We have, while Johnny 5 is using varying methods to connect to boards, you can use Bluetooth serial connections now with Johnny 5 instead of just using a USB port. It is a very good starting point for beginners, again, with the documentation and the community around it. The documentation is robust as ever, and the community is extraordinarily active. I have never seen a day go by where the Gitter channel didn't inform me that some conversation was going on that had to do with the library. We also have an amazing effort to kind of subvert the existing tool chains. So for those familiar with Arduino development, there's a library called AVRDude, and it's written in C. It's 20 years old, and it's used to flash compiled Arduino code onto an Arduino board. Suze Hinton, who is amazing, NoobCat on Twitter, check out her profile. She's subverting the AVR toolchain in JavaScript. She's written AVR girl/Arduino, which can flash, I believe, about 10 different Arduino boards with precompiled Arduino code, all in Node.js. And Fermata Party is one of my favorites because now, in the first few years even, of Johnny 5, when you wanted to get started, you had to download the Arduino IDE. This is over 100 megabytes, and on conference Wi-Fi, when you're running a workshop of 50 people, trying to get them all to download a over 100 megabyte file can be volatile at best. And Fermata Party is just a couple of megs and can do the same thing. We no longer need to download the Arduino IDE just to get started with Johnny 5. Johnny 5 Chrome is something I'm super excited about. Created by Luis Montes, this allows us to run Johnny 5 bots in the browser. We do not need a Node server to run Johnny 5 bots. The implications on the education front alone for this initiative are staggering. Instead of having to worry about setting up servers and teaching kids how to program Node, we give them a Chromebook and a cheap microcontroller, which reduces the cost from an education standpoint to a very small fraction of what it was before. BabbleBots, I've been playing with this library. What it does is you give it a JSON description of your build, and it spits out what I call a thin client. A thin client is a layer of C that communicates with a Node server in order to create a complete robot. Both of my wearables are running BabbleBots programs, and works on some components with the particle photon. I've mostly focused on NeoPixels and RGB color sensors and a couple of types of LED, though I do have the firmware now where you can set any pin to any value over a Node server with BabbleBots. And it doesn't just stop at microcontrollers. We have libraries for drones and quadcopters, Bluetooth, leap motion controllers, video game controllers. If you can plug it into a USB port, there's a pretty decent chance you can use that device with JavaScript. But what makes all of this work? What caused this Cambrian explosion? What causes all this software to keep popping up? What causes us to be such a great environment for beginners? People. That's really what it all boils down to. Software is so much more than code. Software is us. We are, without us, there is no software. Without people, we cannot create new things. We have codes of conduct on everything in NodeBots. The contributor covenant was just applied to Johnny 5. The robots working group for Node has a code of conduct, and our Gitter channels also have codes of conduct, and we all take responsibility for enforcement. We are all there to make sure that we have a good environment for our contributors, for our learners, for everyone. We are open and supportive. We encourage every inventor. It doesn't matter if their project seems, I don't know, useless to you. It doesn't matter if it seems like something you wouldn't do. You encourage every inventor. We try not to say, it's so simple, or just do this, or don't do it that way when someone approaches us with a problem. It's hard, yes, but empathy is hard. Being a good human being is hard, and we try every time to do that. There's no such thing as noobs, only those willing to learn. Considering the NodeBots movement only started in 2013, none of us have more than 3 years experience with NodeBots except maybe Rick. So who are we to judge? We have supportive and active diversity. We reach out to new communities in order to bring them into the environment. We create a safe space to learn, and we constantly recognize that as a community, we can always do better. We can always watch ourselves a little better. We can always be better. I hear a lot of people tell me, oh, well, I just take the people who push the best code. No, you don't have to choose between people and code. If you encourage and support good people, good code will follow. There is nothing on this earth I detest more than hearing, oh, well, they push good code even though they're a terrible person. We don't need them. We can get along without them. So that's something I really want to emphasize, is that we do not need to choose between good code and good people. If we encourage, if we create a good space for good people, good code will follow. We have a strong emphasis on education in the NodeBots community. Our documentation is required in Johnny 5. When you put in a new component, it is I believe it's still unwritten, but your pull request, you will be asked to put documentation for whatever new component, whatever new platform you put in, because we need that documentation. NodeBots days are not so much geared as, come show off the cool thing that you've made, but more, come learn about NodeBots. You haven't tried it out? Come try it out with a group of us. We'll teach you. We'll all learn together. Education is at the core of everything we do. There are I misspelled workshops, neat. There are 3 workshops, I believe, this week for NodeBots. What we do is geared towards education. And yes, all of this is hard. Watching what you say is hard. Being inclusive is hard. Reaching out to new communities is hard. But we must, as a group, put in the effort. And it is worth every second of effort that we expend, because we are doing nothing but making our communities better by performing this outreach, by working hard, by making ourselves better. So I have a couple demos, obviously. So what I've got here is my jacket and my belt. If you go to that URL, you can change the colors on the devices. Right sleeve decided to throw a temper tantrum and is offline, but left sleeve, hood, and controller are all online, and the belt is online. You can also go on Twitter and tweet at the hashtag NodeSash with a CSS parsable color of any kind, and it will also add the color to the belt queue. So I'm sure my colors are changing as I speak. So another thing the jacket can do is I have this little controller, and the reason I brought my conference hoodie up here is I have attached an RGB sensor to the jacket, and so if I go up close to my conference hoodie, I can change all the light colors on my jacket to that color. I can also, this is an accelerometer built into the shield, and the pitch and roll of the accelerometer change the color of the sleeve and the hood respectively. And then I have what I call rainbow fun time, because it's just rainbows. Because we always need more rainbows. Let me show you a little bit of the code. This is my, this is the particle IDE for reference, and I'm gonna close that. This is the code for the jacket. This is the C code. I did make a couple tweaks to it, but 95% of this by line was created by JavaScript, by a JavaScript library called BabbleBots, which translates C to get this exactly the way I wanted it. And it is quite a bit of firmware in the jacket. I also have the code for the belt on here. Way too many pieces of code in here. And then close that. And this is the code for the belt. This is 100% BabbleBots. So this was, I have not touched this code. This was entirely generated by JavaScript. And so that's the site. Neat. So it uses WebSockets. So as you can see up there, it said, hey, something's wrong with the socket. It'll tell you if one of the devices is offline and not allow you to select it anymore. Yeah, you can do any CSS parsable color in this field. See if I can still type. I can. And now I've added Becca purple to the belt, and you can see it. It's basically each ring represents a color of the queue. The first one to show up is the next color to get out of the queue, first in, first out sort of style. So yeah. And then my node code, what you probably came here to see. I'll close that up. This is my server. Essentially, I'm setting up a Twitter client. That's to control the belt. I'm then telling Particle to log in and list my devices, and telling it that the belt is the device with name belt. And then I'm setting up some events. When the belt is refreshed, what that means is when the belt has all of its colors and it's sent them back to the server, tell the browser to refresh the color list, offline and online, to detect when a device is offline. Same with jacket. And then I've got update colors, which calls add color, so photons are interesting devices. You can write functions in C and then give them a REST-like interface. You can tell Particle, I want this function to be callable from the internet, I want to be able to pass it a parameter, and then I want it to run this chunk of C code. So what I did with BabbleBots is I said, okay, if I've got NeoPixels, I want one of my custom functions to be, I want to pass an index and colors, and change the colors of every NeoPixel after that index to whatever color is being sent in the string. So these are calling those functions. And the way it keeps track of the colors on the server is it uses particle variables, which are like particle functions, except I'm saying publish this variable to the particle cloud so I can go get it, so I can go take this variable and keep track of it. For instance, if you were making a weather station, you might make the readings from your temperature sensor into a particle variable so you could access it from your node server. Okay, and then at the bottom here, I have my Twitter situation. So again, I'm searching for the node stash hashtag, and then basically fun regular expressions to detect many of the different types of CSS parsable colors. I then have a second catch for CSS color words, such as Becca purple, lemon chiffon, lighter blue, and that's my server. Just a little under 200 lines of code to get all of this working. And yeah, that's what I've got from a code perspective. So now I'm going to go back to my slides, if I can find, there we go. The question I regularly get about my NodeBots projects or any NodeBots projects is that's cool, but what are they worth? Are you ever going to start a business with these? Or are you ever going to sell them? Or the thing about that is, monetarily, who gives a hoot what these are worth? The monetary value from these side projects, from the NodeBots community, it could be nil and I'd be okay with that because I don't focus on that. And a side about side projects is related to this, and that I asked the NodeBots community, what do you love about NodeBots? What makes you excited to continue participating in this community? And far and away, the most exciting responses I got, the most numerous response I got was that it revitalized a lost interest in both participating in an open source community and coding in general. Quite a few of us in the NodeBots community have experienced burnout. I myself was about to quit tech when I found NodeBots, and I am 110% convinced that NodeBots and the community therein is the only reason I'm standing on this stage, is the only reason I'm still in tech. And I think there's quite a few of us in the community that feel that way. We've formed new friendships, and again, because we push each other to be better, push each other to be good as a community, and push each other to work hard, we flex that empathy muscle. Empathy is hard because empathy is a muscle. You must work it. You must continue to try and push yourself harder to be more empathetic to other people because, yes, it is hard, but it is worth it. The worth I get from my toy side projects is every day I wake up knowing I have friends, fun things to build, and the help I need to keep doing better. The tech community can be toxic and can wear you down, and it had worn me down. Having a community in which I feel safe as a contributor, as a member, has revitalized my passion just for software development and for being me. So the present is pretty great. I mean, I can stand up here with these garments that are lit up and connected to the internet. We can build amazing things right now with JavaScript. But where are we going? The future can be just as exciting as the present. Because of our emphasis on inclusion in education, NodeBots has seen nothing but growth, and I sincerely believe we will continue to grow as a community. Whether we will always be NodeBots is questionable, but whether we will always be a community, I do not question. I see us sticking together. The future of Node is very closely tied with the future of NodeBots. As you all know, we went through a huge rift when Node joined a foundation, when Node joined the Linux Foundation and had its own board. I remember hearing this and thinking, well, this could go one of two ways. Node could get forked 8 times and we'll just kind of fizzle out into non-existence, or we can come out of this stronger. Luckily, we've come out of this much stronger. Node now has LTSs. Node now has support periods. You can walk up to your boss's boss's boss and say, yes, we do have a support window. We do have everything that makes us enterprise ready. You know, with definitions of that varying between companies. With the inclusion working group, inclusivity working group, I believe we've made a good step towards making Node a better place. NodeBots is getting there, and now Node is starting to get there. And I have to say, Ashley Williams making the board as a community member, fantastic. She will do wonderful things for Node, wonderful things for the community, and she definitely inspired a lot of hope from me, and hopefully from many of you about the future of Node in general. So the number one question I always get when talking about the future is, will we have production NodeBots soon? And my bet is yes. Like I said, the Arctic is 12 millimeters square, contains Bluetooth, LE, and Wi-Fi connectivity, and can be controlled by Node. They are currently in their developer preview stage. I'm trying to get my hands on a board. The Tesla 2 is started shipping its pre-orders. It is a $35 Node native controller, so you can code for it in Node with no translation layer. It also has a Johnny 5 wrapper. And the Photon is designed to create your own products and reincorporate their open source design into your product. And while it does still run on a C firmware, you can create a thin client that runs off a Node server and get to about 85% JavaScript. So we're getting there, and we're getting there quickly. But if there's one thing you take away from this talk, it's not how cool NeoPixels are, and it's not how cool robots are, it's this. The present is great, and the future is even brighter, but we must keep working hard to make things better. We must keep making things better. Thank you for listening. I'm Kassandra Perch. Both of those emails work. And I'm NodeBotanist on Twitter. If you have any questions, I will be participating in the robotics panel later this afternoon. And once again, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.